The wine hit me before I understood what was happening. Cold, sharp, blooming across my cream silk blouse like a slow bruise. It dripped off my collarbone and onto Evelyn's polished hardwood floors in her Atlanta dining room. For a second, no one moved. Then Daniel stood over me, jaw tight, glass still in his hand, and shouted, "Leave by morning." Forks hovered midair. His sister's phone kept recording, the tiny red light blinking. My stomach dropped, but not because of the stain spreading down my torso. I'd seen this coming. I just hadn't expected it to be so public. I didn't argue, I didn't cry. I folded my napkin with steady hands, placed it beside my untouched plate, and said, "Okay." They mistook my silence for surrender. But what none of them understood was that Daniel had signed something 3 weeks earlier, and I had the copy. 6 years earlier, I was 32, newly married, and convinced that steadiness was a form of love. I'm Claire Whitmore, a CPA based in Decatur, Georgia. I build spreadsheets for a living. I notice patterns. I calculate risk before I leap. Daniel, on the other hand, sells it. At 41 now, he's the kind of commercial real estate broker who fills a room without trying. Tailored suits, easy grin, stories about 7-figure listings that make people lean in. His mother, Evelyn, calls him her visionary. At holidays, she'd lift her glass and say, "Daniel's always thinking bigger." Then she'd smile at me and add, "And Claire keeps us all organized with her spreadsheets. Ambitious versus stable, fire versus filing cabinet." What no one mentioned was that my stable income funded our life. On March 12, 2021, I wired $84,000 from my personal savings for the down payment on our Craftsman in Decatur. I still have the wire confirmation saved as a PDF. Daniel thanked me privately, kissed my forehead, promised it was our launchpad. At closing, I insisted both our names go on the deed. He'd stalled for weeks, said it complicated his financing narrative, but eventually signed beside me. Publicly, we were polished. Instagram-perfect porch photos, anniversary captions about my rock. Privately, he teased my risk aversion whenever I questioned one of his investments. In public, I was cautious, Claire. In private, I was the safety net. I told myself that love meant absorbing the imbalance. By the time the wine hit my blouse last Saturday, the cracks had been there for years. Dinner was supposed to be celebratory. Daniel had hinted all week about a huge listing in Buckhead. 12 retail units, prime corner lot. By the time we sat down at Evelyn's long mahogany table, I already knew he hadn't secured it. His smile was stretched too thin. The Napa Cabernet kept refilling his glass faster than anyone else's. Halfway through the main course, Evelyn dabbed her lips and said lightly, "It's hard for men to build empires, contentes, when their wives don't support big risks." The table went quiet in that polite Southern way, everyone pretending not to hear the target in the sentence. Daniel laughed, but it cracked. "Yeah, well, some people are terrified of leverage." He turned to me. "Claire refused to use the house as collateral. Killed the deal." I kept my voice even. I asked to see the numbers. "You're dead weight," he snapped, standing so abruptly his chair scraped the floor. "Just leave by morning." And then the wine flew. The silence afterward felt staged. I noticed everything. Daniel's jaw trembling despite his bravado. Evelyn's strange, satisfied stillness. My sister-in-law's phone angled slightly higher, recording. I met Daniel's eyes. "Are you sure?" "Yes," he said. I didn't cry. I didn't defend myself. I drove 15 minutes to the Marriott on Claremont Road, checked in under my maiden name. In the elevator mirror, the stain spread across my blouse, dark and uneven, like something internal surfacing. Before I even booked the room, I opened our joint banking app. There it was, a pending transfer of $62,400 I had never authorized. That's when I realized the wine wasn't the real betrayal. At 6:12 a.m., the hotel room was quiet in that artificial, carpeted way that makes everything feel temporary. I sat at the small laminate desk with my laptop open and ordered black coffee I didn't touch. My blouse from the night before lay folded into the chair beside me, stiff where the wine had dried. I logged into our joint account and downloaded 6 months of statements. 3 transfers jumped out immediately. The pending $62,400 dated July 14th, 2026. Before that, $18,000 on May 3rd. Then $24,500 on June 10th. All sent to something called Whitestone Ventures, LLC. I'd never heard of it. A quick search on the Georgia Secretary of State website showed the registration date, 9 months earlier. Organizer, Daniel Whitmore. Principal address, Evelyn Whitmore's home. I felt the shift then, not panic, not even anger, just clarity. I searched Daniel's email from the shared iPad backup and found a DocuSign notification buried in his trash folder. Temporary spousal consent, capital contribution. It had my name typed neatly beneath a blank signature line. I never signed it. By 8:03 a.m., I was on the phone with the bank's fraud department, placing a hold on the pending transfer and freezing the joint line of credit. At 10:30, I was sitting in the office of a property attorney in downtown Decatur, forwarding him PDFs. By noon, I understood something Daniel clearly hoped I didn't. Georgia is an equitable distribution state, and the deed to our house lists me as a 50% owner. I went back to the hotel and created a Google Drive folder titled Jalip. Inside it, I uploaded statements, screenshots, the LLC registration, the DocuSign email. I changed every password I had ever shared. I froze my credit with Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. My phone kept lighting up. Mom says you embarrassed us. Come home and apologize. You're being dramatic. They believed I would fold, that shame would drive me back into compliance. But Daniel didn't know I'd read Whitestone's operating agreement line by line. Buried in Section 4.3 was a clause about personal guarantees on improperly authorized capital contributions. By Tuesday, I was no longer reacting, I was preparing. By Friday afternoon, Daniel was hosting a broker open house for a new listing in Midtown. Glass walls, catered charcuterie, branded champagne flutes. It was the kind of curated environment where image did most of the selling. I wore navy, minimal makeup, low heels. I carried a slim manila folder. He saw me the moment I stepped off the elevator. For half a second, relief crossed his face. He thought I'd come to fix it. To apologize. Evelyn was near the balcony doors, laughing too loudly. As I approached, she said to no one in particular, "Some women just aren't built for the pressures of success. They get unstable." I let the word hang in the air. Then I turned to Daniel, who was standing beside two colleagues from his brokerage, and asked evenly, "Should we discuss Whitestone Ventures?" The silence was immediate and absolute. I opened the folder and removed a copy of the operating agreement filed September 2nd, 2025. Section 4.3, I said, my voice steady. Capital contributions derived from marital funds require notarized spousal consent. I looked up. You didn't have that. One of the colleagues shifted his weight. Daniel's smile faltered. Claire, this isn't the place. It became the place when you used joint funds. I set down the bank statements showing the transfers. $18,000, $24,500, the halted $62,400. Then I pressed play on my phone. His voice filled the bright, echoing room. She'll never check the statements. She doesn't even look at that account. The mask slipped in real time. Daniel's face drained of color. That was taken out of context, he said quickly, but his voice lacked its usual polish. Evelyn's lips parted, but no sound came out. I've retained counsel, I continued. The pending transfer has been frozen. My attorney is reviewing the unauthorized capital contributions and the personal guarantee clause attached to them. A client near the kitchen island quietly set down her flute. Daniel tried to laugh. It came out brittle. You're overreacting. No, I said softly. I'm responding. I gathered the papers back into the folder. You told me to leave by morning. I'm choosing to, but I'm not leaving what's legally mine. Around us, conversations thinned, then stopped altogether. One by one, potential buyers drifted toward the exit, murmuring polite excuses. In a room built on presentation, the truth had better staging. And just like that, the power dynamic shattered in full view. The next 60 days unfolded without shouting, without spectacle, just paperwork and consequence. By the following Wednesday, Daniel's brokerage placed him under internal review for failure to disclose material financial liabilities. 2 weeks later, the Midtown listing quietly transferred to another agent. Clients don't like instability, they can smell it. The deal he'd planned to fund through Whitestone Ventures collapsed once the frozen transfer surfaced during due diligence. Investors withdrew. Emails went unanswered. Mediation was efficient, clinical. The house in Decatur went on the market in September. When it sold, I recouped my original $84,000 down payment plus 50% of the equity appreciation. The wire confirmation hit my personal account on October 28th at 3:17 p.m. I saved that PDF too. Whitestone Ventures dissolved under legal scrutiny before the year ended. I signed a 12-month lease on a one-bedroom downtown with tall windows and terrible parking. I updated my direct deposit at work, removed Daniel as my emergency contact. There were no final speeches, no cinematic closure. They called me cold. I called it documented. On my first night there, I framed the confirmation of the equity wire and set it on my kitchen counter before the furniture even arrived. Then I blocked Evelyn's number. The wine stain never fully came out. I kept the blouse anyway. Over the next 60 days, everything unraveled quietly. By the end of the following week, Daniel's brokerage opened an internal review into his disclosure practices. No one announced it publicly, but his name disappeared from 2 upcoming listings on the company website. The Midtown deal he'd been counting on stalled, then collapsed altogether when investors flagged undisclosed financial instability during due diligence. Instability has a way of echoing. Mediation was scheduled for early September. We sat across from each other in a neutral conference room, fluorescent lights humming overhead. The Craftsman indicator went on the market within 10 days. When it closed, I received my original $84,000 down payment plus 50% of the equity appreciation. The wire confirmation landed in my personal account on October 28th at 3:17 p.m. I watched the numbers settle before I closed the app. Whitestone Ventures dissolved before the quarter ended. I signed a 12-month lease downtown, 1 bedroom, concrete floors, more light than storage. I updated my direct deposit at work and removed Daniel as my emergency contact. No dramatic speeches, no final confrontation. They called me cold. I called it documented. The first night in my new apartment, before the couch was delivered, I printed and framed the equity wire confirmation and leaned it against the wall. Then I blocked Evelyn's number. The wine stain never fully came out. I kept the blouse anyway.